Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth, and I'll work with you to unlock your potential and amplify the scale of your company. Welcome to 2021. Today, we are talking about creating a new beginning, reviving and saving a legacy business. I want to thank our main sponsor today, Irish Titan. Irish Titan builds and grows e-commerce channels using only local Titans, which means no contractors, freelancers, or offshore resources to deliver business first, online second solutions. Their clan includes strategists, marketing and creative technology Titans, and they provide their clients with high touch partnerships, not a transactional experience. Our other sponsors today include Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank, Romaine Berg Digital Marketing Agency, and Voyager U. A reminder that Voyager U costs just $19 a month and is free to Club E members until January 31st. Just use the promo code NEWTRAIL, NEWTRAIL, New Trail. That's all caps. You can learn more about them in the courses section of Club E. Also, subscribe and like our Club E channel. That helps us deliver better content to you. And a reminder that you can catch our latest Club E sessions on your favorite podcast platform. All right, I'd like to introduce today's guest. Welcome, Mike Siegler. Mike is Senior Vice President at Communications Systems, Inc., otherwise known as CSI. Welcome, Mike.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, and you can communicate with Mike and get his email address in the comments field. Additionally, put your questions in the comments field, and we will work those into our conversation today to the extent that we can. Okay, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your firm, and what you've been up to recently.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I always love being a part of the Club E community and different events. This has been really a good time coming, start of the new year. So yeah, my background, born and raised in Minnesota. So running into a lot of friends and family around the cities. I started as a technology guy. So my background is in electrical engineering of all things. So started off with detailed design work, and then over the years, worked in small and big companies around town, doing leadership things, project management, people management, and then had a chance over the last couple of years to become the CEO of the SASE, which was an SD-WAN company locally, creating never down environments for businesses to the internet. And in the last year here in May, we sold that company to CSI and kind of on to a new chapter where I'm being chartered to build a services business within a legacy business, and that's been my professional path. Also like to do some teaching of project management and critical thinking, problem solving at Minneapolis Community Technical College, and also I'm on the St. Louis Park Community Technology Advisory Committee, where bring a little bit of that real world technology usage to the public sector.
And then on the personal front, I know you're a skier, just got back from a ski trip, as well as a father. So how have things been on the home front with the lockdown?
Let's just say distance learning is not easy when you've got 10-year-old twins and an 8-year-old. So the peekaboo Zoom camera on off, not paying attention, it's been a challenge. So getting them back into school is a priority.
Well, for all of our sakes, I hope that happens soon.
Indeed.
You mentioned that you started your career and have gone down the road here in the technology front. You've been working with technology organizations and doing some turnarounds. What are some of the first steps that you take into assessing the team and determining a direction in one of these turnarounds?
Yeah, so to your point, I had an opportunity to come into some organizations that were in turmoil. Some of the lead technical people had left. They had been acquired and morale turned sour, and so it was a situation where the business needed to continue to operate, but a lot of the key talent was exiting. And so, step one is to try to calm nerves, right? So I always say, first and foremost, is meet the people. So get a sense of, using empathy, understanding one-on-ones, asking a lot of questions, what's working, what isn't working, why did people leave? Why is this happening fundamentally? And a lot of times you find it's simply change. It's uncertainty and change. And when people are put into a corner, they feel they're put into a corner, it's easier to exit and find their next path than it is to stick with something that they're not sure where it's going to land. So it really does come down to, having one-on-ones, asking questions, identifying those champions within the group that want to stick, that want to help you move things to another level, or fix things that are completely broken. And then also figuring out who are the detractors, right? Who do you have to kind of sideline a little bit to kind of get out of your way, and how do you reinforce the positive behaviors and focusing on people's strengths.
Sounds a little bit about being a dad and trying to get the best out of your kids.
I always tell people, electrical engineering, I didn't get any psychology in college. No one taught me emotional intelligence and reading people, right? That became one of those school of hard knocks.
All right. And then, I wish it were true that all of the investments that we made way back when at Sherpa Partners worked out. And you and I, Mike, have known each other for a lot of years.
Yep.
So it's been a fun journey with you, both professionally and personally. And certainly in Brimacombe Capital front, I wish all the investments work. They don't always work. You probably know that better than anybody.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you learn more from the things that don't work than from the
Mhm.
things that do. So asking the question, have all of your turnarounds been successful? And if not, why not?
Yeah, well, the answer is no, right? So, as they say, 1 in 10 are successful, and 1 in 100 are wildly successful. I've had two turnarounds that were mildly successful, one that failed, and it was simply a matter of time. I find that when we're talking about turning organizations around, putting businesses on a new track, putting groups or teams on a new track, it's all about consistency and time, right? It's that steady pressure that's important. And the two turnarounds that worked, it was because I was in that role for 3 to 4 years, where you could demonstrate the behavior, show by example, reinforce the new behavior, eliminate the old behavior, and then just rinse and repeat over time. And once you've kind of built that trail, then people were able to follow it. They were kind of, it was, the hearts and minds were there. The one that failed, I was only there for 2.5 years. And so when I left at 2.5 years, they reverted right back to what was comfortable and easy. And so all that work we had put in to, focus on, project management and systems engineering and logical, decision making processes kind of fell back to a startup in the garage mode. So for me, it's time and consistency.
Yep, yep. So you talked a little bit about trying to keep morale high, trying to stay positive. Obviously, that's difficult during a turnaround process. How do you do it? You also mentioned that sometimes not all the team members stay.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the common fears and anxieties that the employees are having during a turnaround process?
Yeah. So typically, a common theme I see a lot is just that rumor, right, or uncertainty, or someone heard something, or they read into something that someone said. So it really comes back to communications, 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 and that old mantra of you've got to say the same message 7 or 8 times in the hallway for people to start to really get it is true. So again, I find that I go and I talk to people one on one, and I explain the why. Why are we changing? Why are we shifting? Why are we abandoning what we used to do and doing something new? And when you give that explanation of the why, and it's logical, it's not some fairy tale, but it makes sense, and you can reinforce that message in a one-on-one format and then in a group format, that can kind of build some momentum in the positive direction. And I just always go back to empathy as well, right? Understanding that change is difficult for people and they're scared. And sometimes they might think that their job will be at risk, or their income for their family will be at risk. And those are serious concerns. And so when we lean into those changes, we have to be cognizant that not everybody is this, hey, all right, I'm excited to move to the next level. A lot are interested in just staying and doing what they're doing. So how do you help them along and eliminate that risk or that concern?
Sure. So you've been through a couple of these now. What would you say are more difficult hurdles to have a successful turnaround?
Yeah, for me, it's the people, right? It's the people. You can kind of work around systems, you can kind of work around processes. Those are easy to kind of refix. But when you've got people who are there who don't want to participate, or their hearts and their minds are not in it, it becomes very challenging to move that. So it really does come down to figuring out who's on the bus with you, who wants to help, who's got an open mind, who's the diamond in the rough, or the folks that are, maybe on the fence and you can bring them over, versus who are kind of already 1 foot out and you have to help them accelerate the exit process. So it does come down to kind of understanding the team and getting to know who's in and who's out.
Okay. So one part of the puzzle is the people. Another part of the puzzle is cost cutting.
Yep.
Obviously, that's an easy way to try to right size an organization.
Mhm.
How do you go about assessing where to cut, how deep to cut, what exactly to cut?
Mhm.
But alternatively, you have to be aware that sometimes cost cutting measures might actually cause more harm than good.
Absolutely. And you find yourself in this dilemma of, we need to grow, but we need to cut costs, right? We need to do both, because if we don't have the top line revenue, we can't possibly, have this expense sitting here. So for me, it starts with that assessment process. And going back to one-on-ones with people, I learn a tremendous amount just by asking questions about how people do their jobs and how things operate today. And a lot of times you'll find that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit of things that you don't need to do anymore, right? Or aren't going to be a part of the new strategy. If it's shifting a sales channel, or if it's shifting the types of product or services mix that you're going to be selling, you can stop doing a lot of things. And so a lot of times those one-on-ones, those interviews, those conversations start to, generate ideas right away. And I would say those are the ones that you want to act on quickly, so that you can focus your energy, your precious time and resources in the places that are going to make a difference. To your point, you need to experiment. You're not going to, you come into a new group, you've got a few weeks, a few months to make some calls. They're not going to be right. You're going to have to experiment and then fix what doesn't work. And then I would say, what don't you touch? Well, this day and age, I would say first and foremost, marketing and sales are things that you have to be very cautious about pushing too soon, right? Get some time under your belt for those things, because I feel very strongly that marketing is probably the single most incredibly important thing we can do today. Because when we're stuck in our basements and we're not able to go out and travel and go to trade shows, you need to tell the world what you're doing. You have to tell the world what your goods and services are, and what your team is doing. So for me, marketing is something you got to be very careful with. And then to your point about the sales piece, that's a long process to build, relationships, to build channels. And so I'm very cautious before I make a bold decision on eliminating sales or marketing.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about
Mhm.
the latest turnaround in sales and marketing. So we'll get back to that. Along the way, you have the employees. You talked about the communication and keeping the folks with you that are interested in the turnaround. Trying to figure out a better path forward for the people who aren't interested. Um, Talked a little bit about cost cutting. Kind of the next piece of the puzzle is the board.
Mhm.
So, talk a little bit about your approach with engaging the board when maybe they're a little bit checked out or not as open to a new path forward.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening for me, and this was some of the conversations you and I had when you were helping advise me, is, going from an individual contributor or a low-level manager in a big organization, you don't feel that sense of ownership, right? You don't feel that sense of, it's all on me. It's easy to bail. When I was promoted to the CEO, it kind of, this light bulb went off in my head, and the answer was, I can't leave here, right? I can't leave this environment in disarray. I have to own this. I have to lean in. And that meant getting in front of the board and telling them reality, right? So the previous CEO was painting a very rosy picture and a, well, let's wait and see mentality. And I didn't agree with that, right? My feeling was, no, the time is now, right? Things are not what we think they are. It's a little bit more dire. It's a little bit more urgent, and trying to be honest, trying to be candid and being frank, owning it, right? That the fact is, hey, I'm a part of this too, right? So this is not a blame game. This is we're in this together, and I'm reading it this way, bringing data, right? We talked about showing them costs of sales, return on investment of campaigns, renewal rates, market share, sales cycles, right? So bringing some data to bear. A lot of times the board members are very experienced business people, so they get those things. And when you share the reality of, hey, this is a 12-month sales cycle and they thought it was 6, or that the cost of sale is $12,000 per unit versus 5, you start to get their eyes open around, oh my gosh, you're right, this is not a scalable, profitable process. We need to do something dramatically different here. And so I think the more candor, the better. And again, explaining reality and trying not to be, PowerPoint focused, or, painting this unrealistic fantasy future, but being very candid about reality.
And at ESESA, one of the realities was you had to tweak the distribution model and how you're going to market. Maybe you don't want to get into too much detail, but at a high level, maybe talk through kind of your thought process and changes you made, and then we'll dive into kind of the transaction and that part of your story.
Yeah, so ESESA was around for 18 years. And so early on, in the early 2000s, we had a very novel product, very differentiated, unique. People wanted it. And by the middle of, the 20 teens, it had started to become, a standard. And today, SD-WAN and failover and load balancing is everywhere. And it's a must have, which is both a blessing and a curse. Right now, people know about it, but now you have a lot more competition. And so, to your point, we have to be constantly innovating and adjusting where we're going and where we're servicing. So, fundamentally, it came back to that piece of getting outside advisors, looking at it, with an unbiased look, objective assessment of it, and really kind of breaking it apart and saying, okay, well, if everyone else is moving here, where can we go to make a difference, right? And analyzing our existing customers, looking at the niches that we were really popular in and people were willing to pay that extra amount for the services we provided. So it really came back to that, unbiased, objective assessment of the business.
Okay. So we'll dive into it in a little bit about the work that you and I did, but we were working together, me advising you as a CEO and working with you on the various challenges that you were facing. We worked on the decision to sell. So you had to go through that process of deciding about selling. How did you finally settle on that option?
Mhm.
And were there any kind of aha moments that you had or thought through as you were exploring strategic options for the company?
Yeah, I think, it was, I think, a meeting with you where we talked about the different options that existed. And, we investigated all the different scenarios. So, we first started with the what about a buy side, right? Could we go buy a complementary technology? Could we differentiate that way? Could we go get outside investment? So I think, by starting to do those other aspects first, you start getting feedback from investment bankers, you get feedback from capital providers on, is this viable, not viable? So you're doing your homework, you're testing, the hypothesis of these things along the way, which is very, very helpful, because not only does it then help you eliminate these different things, so it's a process of elimination, but it also, when you go back to the board, you can say with confidence, we've looked at all these other options, right? And we can either, stay where we are, or we can go do something like, a sell side and see what opportunities there are to, again, maximize shareholder value. And that was essentially that process of elimination, of going through and working on all the different options that I think really drove that final decision.
Sure. So, and rightfully so, you decided not to stay status quo. You did decide to exit the business. Talk a little bit about the process. Did you go through a formal sell side engagement? And then did you have a team? And how did you go about making that decision?
Yeah. So again, once again, like a lot of your panelists, I learned the hard way, right? We tried to do a transaction on our own, right? Do it on the cheap. We didn't want to pay for, expert opinions, and it failed, right? And we spent a ton of money for something that didn't go through. So as we kind of finalized this process of elimination and got to, okay, truly the sell side is the right thing to do. You're working with you, helping to put together a team. worked to find an investment banker partner, a legal firm, uh, worked with you and Dynasty Leadership also as advisors and helping to kind of check and balance contracts and are these the right people for you? And I think your best advice was go have lunch with these people when you could still go have lunch with people, and interview them and see, what's a good cultural fit because we were a small business. We're not going to want to go sign up with people who are too big for our britches, right? So we want to find someone who's aligned with us and similar in size and scope.
Okay. How did you go about prepping for the sale?
Mhm.
And then talk a little bit about how long the process took, maybe some of the challenges you faced, and then was there an impact of COVID along the way?
Yeah. So it was very interesting timing with COVID, right? So first step is when you enter into that formal process, you're working with investment bankers and they're asking you lots of questions that you don't have an answer to, right? And they're asking for what's your renewal rates and what's your trends here and what's your most profitable customer and all these metrics that hey, as a small business, we weren't tracking, we weren't analyzing. So step one is I had to hire a fractional CFO to come in and essentially take our books and tear them upside down and analyze them left to right and say okay well here's what this looks like here's the reality of the data and that also helped us to kind of formulate the story of well what's the value to a potential buyer with knowing these new metrics, right? It's not some gobbledygook. It's actually here's the cost of sale, here's your renewal rates, here's your market your market share growth or decline, and being able to have that down cold was very important before we started going through and talking to potential buyers.
Well, you had a lot of layers of complexity there. You did a nice job handling it.
Yeah, well, and to your point, when COVID hit in January, essentially all M&A went on hold, right? And so we were in the middle of a transaction and testing the waters on both sides, and lots of new legal language got thrown into contracts around COVID that we were all not quite sure about. But at the end of the day, we work through the risk of what happens if employees get sick, what happens if we shut down the operation, what happens if there's more government lockdowns, customers go away. So we had to kind of manage those expectations through the close of the transaction.
And this process, what do you think was the hardest part for you personally?
I would say it was the duration, right? I mean, this drug on for a year and a half, and it was back and forth with legal, and 12 more things that people want to see, and then another 12 more things that people want to see, and then we want to see these things again, but differently. And so it was kind of a constant barrage of requests and due diligence. And over time, when you don't have a large team to leverage, you're doing a lot of that yourself, and so it can be tiring, right? You can get that deal fatigue. And I would say, some of those lessons learned are to just stay focused and stay committed to the process.
Okay. So you speak about lessons. Was there a piece or two of advice that you thought was most impactful that you received along the transaction process?
Yeah, no, I had a lot of the one-liners from folks that have been through a lot more of these than I had, and it's that the deal can die 2 to 3 times before it closes. It's never done till it's done. You have these adages, but they're true. And there's a lot of times where I thought it wasn't going to happen, and had to kind of let it sit for 3 weeks or a month, and then come back at it again in full steam. So it's that stay focused, stay engaged in the process, and there's going to be ebbs and flows through the process.
How about post close? Do you want to comment at all on what life is like after the transaction? What are your responsibilities? What are you up
Yeah.
to? And maybe what have you learned since then?
Yeah, I would say, the first time I heard this was at one of your events at the Minneapolis Club, which was the close of the transaction is only the beginning, right? There's all the interaction, the integration work to be done, and there's all the cleanup and follow up. You've got these shareholders that are now ex shareholders, but they still need to be managed, right? They still need to be supported, and there's escrows to be released, and there's waterfalls to be updated, and there's legal issues to address, and all of those things need to have a steady hand. And when you're now part of a new group that falls to the old gang, right, that's still there, if they're still there, And so there was an extra level of my job that was continuing on with, prior shareholder relationships. And that was important, right? Because, a successful transaction is getting them their money when it's all said and done. So there was a lot of extra work there that I had not anticipated.
Okay. Reminder to everybody that you can find Mike's email address in the comments field. If you have a question for us, please put it in there. Similarly, if you want to reach out to me, you can find me through the Club E platform. Happy to pass questions along to Mike. And Mike, I want to jump back to, you mentioned Dynasty and Todd Eberhardt a couple of minutes ago. Want to give a shout out to Todd. We're a big fan of his here. I've worked with him personally, had him work with other companies I've been involved in. He's been a speaker at Club E. I know you're a fan too. Maybe just touch
Yeah.
on, Todd and the work that you've done with him.
Yeah, so I got connected with Todd early on, and when I was first promoted to CEO, because here I am in a new role that I'd never been in before, and I knew that it was important for me to get out of my office and learn the things that I didn't understand. And so I met with the normal folks that I had in my network, but I needed someone who'd been there and done that, right? And so Todd has, serial entrepreneur, has built large organizations, has seen the ups and downs of those things, and he has a fantastic consultative approach of kind of asking the right question at the right time. And so, early on, he helped me kind of get acclimated with my surroundings, kind of gave me that confidence that I can go in and talk to those board members, so I can bring the data that they're going to need to see. And then as we started to pivot toward what's an exit plan look like, he was encouraging of reach out, introducing me to people. Rick and I had known each other, so that was nice and complimentary. But I was able to talk to probably 24 to 30 people that I would have never had contacts with without working with Todd and you, to make sure that I was, turning over every stone, right? That I wasn't missing an opportunity, that I was chasing down every potential, outcome, again, to the betterment of that shareholder value. So, Todd was tremendously helpful. Working with you was tremendously helpful at different times in that entire process. But I think the key lesson there was, go pro, right? Don't sit in your office and try to figure this stuff out on your own. It's okay to go ask for help.
Yeah. So, all right. So you open that door. I have to ask. It's a little bit self-serving, of course, but you and I worked together for a while, year and a half. You were on the front end trying to figure out what to do. Then it was okay. Now we're gonna flip the switch and go into a sales mode. Over that period of time, in my estimation, you made great progress both with the business as well as personally as a business leader. What were the main learnings that you felt you took away from the time that you and I spent working together?
Yeah, well, so for me, it was number one was get the data, right? So we can't sit there and pontificate about something we don't have any data to back up, right? And we can't make good decisions without the data. So get the data. You help me with that. Use a structured process. Kind of that breaking things down into markets, verticals, key customers, differentiators, and be very structured on how you approach what do you do well and where can you make a difference in the business community. Reinforcing a positive mindset. I think that was probably my biggest aha with you was, being able to just keep coming at it every day. I think you used the hashtag grinders win. That's exactly right. You've got to come at it every day. There's a lot more bad days than good days. And you just got to keep coming at it with that positive mindset. And that's tough to do. And when you layer COVID on top of it, in some cases, it's almost impossible to do. So getting out of bed and staying focused on success is important. And then building a team, right? Making sure that you're asking the right questions, you're challenging your own assumptions. One of those, there was a conversation you and I had at the Minneapolis Club after one of the events that it was I was questioning, to move on an employee, and you said you should do it right now, and that was like game changing. You're like, yeah, you're right. I need to do it right now. I shouldn't wait 3 months or 6 months, and that was in November of 2019. So if I would have waited, I'd have been in COVID land. So to your point, we never know as business leaders what's going to be around the corner. So taking an action now, an imperfect action now, is better than waiting for that perfect action sometime in the future.
Yep.
So,
and there were a couple of categories that you had been trying to get into with some different channel partners, and you had to pivot a little bit on how you're going after a couple of these market segments. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we had been, experimenting in a fairly expensive channel market where we had to pay to play, we had to pay for these events, we had to go, sponsor a whole bunch of things to get our name recognized. Well, it took a lot of deep pockets, and the outcome of that wasn't what we expected it to be. And as the competition continued to grow, we were just kind of found ourselves throwing, good money after bad into these channels. And until I had the data from this whole sell process, fractional CFO kind of crunching the data, what's the actual cost of sale around this channel? It was very eye opening to me that we were, it was a no brainer decision. It was the legacy existing business, and growing that was, 10 times, 100 times more profitable than this channel business was or ever was. And so, I was able to take that data along with the trends and say, we're shutting this down, right? And we're going to double down over here on our legacy business and focus in on those key verticals where customers do value what we do and do seek us out, and we are a leader in that niche. And we were able to make hay with that, and we were able to save all of this money. So turning a negative EBITDA into positive earnings for the first time in a couple of years.
Yeah, that was great. Good movement on your part. So a couple questions, Mike. So from Rob, interesting question. I'll let you answer, and then I'll throw a
Yeah.
couple out there. But Rob is interested in what were the most influential books that you've read about business.
Well, so again, before it was taboo, I was a big Jack Welch fan. So that's obviously changed with hindsight. But I would say, a lot of those leaders who have been there, done that, are helpful. Some military leaders who have been there, done that, are helpful. And I think some of the key takeaways for me are, back to that, you've got to take action, right? Sitting where you are at the moment is not, it's that grow or die mentality, right? We're in business to make money, we're in business to grow, and we can't sit with status quo. And so wherever you draw your inspiration to get up and get at it, I think is those are the ones that resonate with me.
Okay. Speaking of not sticking with the status quo, I'd throw out there Clayton Christensen's
Yep,
Innovator's Dilemma.
absolutely.
It's a classic.
Hmm.
And so, Rob, I'd add that to your reading list as
Hmm.
well. Another question from Matt, for somebody out there who's thinking about selling their business and they have to kind of prep and get the business ready for that sale, what would be the couple of items that you think they should focus on?
Yeah, and you've got some great panelists who've talked about this and are experts in this space. But that fractional CFO helped me a ton. So it was financials for me. It was making sure that I understood my balance sheet, I understood the cash flow statements, I understood the revenue for the last 5 years, that I understood revenue per customer, revenue per product, the margin per product, the trends of the renewals or trends of customer adoption. It's these metrics that you know are sometimes nice to have when we're running our business, are critical to have when you're trying to find the right buyer, because they're going to have a different interest, right? Depending if it's private equity who's going to buy you for that multiples of EBITDA and cash flow, or if it's a strategic who's going to buy you for a bunch of patent portfolio or whatever it might be. Everyone's got their own requests, and their own little requirements of what they're going to look for.
Okay. A reminder to everybody, please hit the subscribe button. Catch us also on your favorite podcast platform. And then again, we have time here for some other questions if anybody from the audience wants to put something in the comments field. All right. So kind of look back at our conversation
Mhm.
today. If there was a key takeaway that you'd like the audience to bring with them, what would it be?
I would say it's never too late to reinvent your business, right? So depending on where we land, if it's a family business that you've started in your garage and you've run for 25 years, if it's a family business that's been handed down, if it's something you got thrown into out of luck or being unlucky, there's always a chance to turn it around. There's always a chance to do something good with it. And I think that's been my eye opener is, coming into SASE where it had 18 years of progress, and it kind of stalled out at the end, and we were not sure where it was going to go or what was going to happen with it or how we could compete with all of these huge players out there. There was a chance to give it some new life, and now being a part of CSI is a perfect example of that. We now have more resources, more options, more things to sell, more channels to sell them in, and the team is pumped, and we're excited, and we've got new things to go do, and it's breathed new life into the team that was kind of stuck and wasn't sure where to go. So there's always a chance to reinvent or kind of breathe new life into things.
Mhm. And then you've had an interesting career with the various technologies you've worked on, a couple of turnaround situations,
Mhm.
now into a new chapter. I guess one question would be, what do you think the next chapter looks like? And then second part to that would be, was there a lesson along the way that you learned that
Mhm.
you wish you would have learned sooner?
Yeah, I think it's two pieces. One is, and I took this one to heart, is never turn down an opportunity, right? If that's just an opportunity to have lunch, that's an opportunity to have a conversation. I met some of the most influential people in my life just by saying yes to a LinkedIn request, or hey, would you mind a 30-minute phone call? And having those, being open to networking, being open to a new conversation or a new introduction can sometimes change your life. Would be number one. And secondly is be bold, right? Don't worry about what might happen. Just lean in and make today happen, right? And if it doesn't work out today, go work on it tomorrow, because fundamentally, it's our job to pave that path and to kind of will these things into existence. If we don't work on them, they're not going to happen. So be bold.
All right. And then next chapter.
I've got a lot of work to do where I'm at right now. I'm definitely job is to grow a business within a business, so I'm excited to do that. But uh, I'm an energetic leader, and I'm out there to help wherever I can.
Well, lots of energy. That's for sure. Working on your skiing this winter, or what are you doing on the personal front?
Well, I love to ski and like to get out there whenever I can. Obviously, COVID has slowed all that down. But right now, it's taking care of my kids and getting them back to school if I can, and then we'll see what the spring has in store for us.
All right, great. Mike, thank you very much for joining us. Great conversation today. Look forward to tracking how things work out at CSI and the progress you make there. Hope you'd come back and spend some time with us in the future.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.